It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. Well, as always, we have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to jump right into it. First thing I want to do is remind you, if you missed the last show, I'm going to really strongly encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com and listen to the first segment at least. I introduced two major announcements. These are two things that I have never shared on the radio show prior that are new. The first one is we've lowered the borrowing rate. We can now access money at 2.75%. Yes, that's correct, folks. I'm going to repeat myself. 2.75%. Now, why is that so important? Well, being able to borrow money at that low of a rate now, especially now with the with the increasing interest rates that are going on, that is incredibly powerful. But when you couple that with the ability to earn interest, earn dividends, like we talk about with the personal bank concept all the time, if you're earning dividends at 5.75 to 6% right now, and you then can access those funds to pay off bills, purchase items, or invest in other things, you know, here's a simple question I ask people all the time. It's really very simple. If you're earning 5.75, for example, and then you get charged 2.75 when you access the funds, what's your money doing? And the answer is very straightforward. It's still earning interest. In fact, in that case, it's earning 3% interest. And here's the big takeaway. I'm coming right out of the gate with it for you folks today, and then we're going to get on some other stuff. So just hang in there. But the big takeaway is real simple. You're earning 3% interest on money you spent. Now, think about that a minute. You're keeping positive arbitrage. You're still earning interest on dollars you spent. Show me another place to do that, and I'm all ears. And then here's why people have more money with the personal bank concept. It's that simple. We all spend money for whatever reason, right? It costs to live. If you can earn some interest on some of the dollars that you spend, that's just extra interest, extra money in your pocket, isn't it? It's mathematical. It's straight. It's plain and simple. Forget the rates of returns and everything else on investments. How you can still do all those things, and I'm going to share with you further how. But the biggest key, the biggest difference is the ability to earn interest on money you spent. That, folks, is powerful. And if you compound that, by the way, it's just not one time. It's every single year the rest of your life. So again, if you could get interest on 10 grand, or 100 grand, or $1 million. You know, folks spend, a typical average person spends about $2 million in their lifetime, according to statistics, okay? What if you could earn interest on a portion of that? In addition to your investing and everything else that you do, and not interfere with that, not take away from that. In fact, not only not interfere or take away, but actually enhance it. And what do I mean by that? Well, that's the other big announcement. So, this is super exciting. Again, this is new. Unless you heard it in the last show, you have never heard this before. And I'm going to be talking about this further as we go forward. But it's the ability to leverage the money and using other people's money, using bank monies. Folks, how would you like to make money from a bank instead of having to pay money to the bank? Now, wouldn't that be interesting? A change of pace for a lot of folks, wouldn't it? And what do I mean by this? Well, typically, if you fund an insurance policy to earn dividends, and that's the first step of what we do for the personal bank concept. And again, we fund policies not for death benefit purposes primarily, typically. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes for long-term care. Sometimes a combination. But the bottom line is, most of my clients, their primary purpose or focus is to earn money with guarantees safely and get a positive rate of return. Okay, like I said, 5.75 to 6%. You've heard me talk about that frequently. That is the current rates. By the way, those rates are on the rise because interest rates are on the rise. Okay, and historically speaking, these type of policies have paid 6, 7, 8%. That's the norm. We also have index options, just so you know, where there's no downside risk, and they have double-digit upside potential depending on what the markets do, what the particular indexes, like the S&P 500 or others. So you can do a mix of both, by the way, which is what most of my clients do. I talk a lot about the fixed option because it's simple to understand and it's a set rate, it's a set amount. That's simple to explain and when I'm sharing the concept. But the reality is my average client doesn't make 5.75 to 6%. They make more than that. They make quite a bit more than that because we're doing a blend of index and fixed options. Now, the ratios of that all depend on the client, their age, their risk tolerance, all those kinds of things, all the things that many investors are already familiar with. 50-50 splits, 60-40, 70-30, those are typical ranges of splits of how much goes in the fixed bucket versus the index bucket. Now, with the markets the way they are right now, a lot of people are concerned and scared, and rightly so in many cases. We're seeing more people leaning towards more of the fixed options, obviously. But that can change, that varies. But my point is simple. Most of my clients don't average 5.75, 6%. They average more than that, quite a bit more, because depending on their ratio. Okay? Now, all of it's backed and guaranteed against losses. It's all tax-free. So if you could invest in an index, for example, with no downside risk, with double-digit upside potential, tax-free, that's interesting. When you can access the money and still earn the positive arbitrage, for example, what if you earn 10% in a year in your index account, which happens quite frequently, and then you access the funds to either invest in something else or purchase an item or pay some bills or pay off some debt or whatever, and you get charged 2.75%. Folks, the positive arbitrage isn't 3% there, okay? It's over 7% positive arbitrage. In other words, you're still earning like 7% on your money that you spent every year for the rest of your life, depending on what that investment index does, right? And those indexes have historically averaged somewhere in the 7-8% range is typical, okay? 6, 7, 8, depending on which index we're talking about, okay? Over long periods of time. I'm talking over multiple decades. So that's something I want people to understand, but it gets even better than that. And again, this is the new part. This is the part that, again, unless you heard it in the last show, you haven't heard this part either. So the 2.75 borrowing rate is huge because that enhances or increases our positive arbitrage. But here's the other part. You have the option. It's totally up to you. But if you want to earn interest on other people's money, in other words, do you want to use bank lines of credit to fund additional premiums, to earn additional dividends, and then earn the positive arbitrage, the spread on additional monies? And most people are like, yeah, of course. So typically, this is how it works. You fund the first year. And let's use just a simple example. Let's say you funded $100,000. Now, again, I'm not using that you don't have to fund $100,000. You can fund $10,000. You can fund $1 million, depending on your situation and your wherewithal. Don't let the zeros, add a zero, take away a zero. The principle is the same. But I'm going to use $100,000 just as a simple example and a common example I work with many clients. You fund the first $100,000 to get dividends, and we'll do a mix of fixed and index options. The fixed, again, is like the 5.75, 6% fixed rate with guarantees. No doubt, they guarantee a certain rate every year, and those are on the climb because of interest rates. And then the other portion of it would be based on indexing, where you'll have a double-digit upside potential each year with no downside losses. Around 7% over the past 25, 30 years or more average is the typical average. Some are more aggressive, some a little less. My point is, you put that $100,000 in, again, to earn dividends, to grow your money safely with guarantees, no downside risk, tax-free, okay? Then the next year, the $100,000 contribution or premium becomes due. Now, you have a choice. You could add another $100,000 the following year if you wanted to. That's certainly entirely up to you. Or you can take we have banks now that'll lend at 2.75% interest, and will fund that next year premium for you. So in other words, the bank's contributing $100,000 now. This is in year 2. You put in $100,000 the first year, the bank puts in $100,000 the second year. And they're going to charge you 2.75% And just on the fixed option alone, at 575, you would keep 3% difference. You would keep that positive arbitrage. So in other words, if we're talking about the fixed option alone, you're earning 575 on the first 100, your money you contributed, and 3% on the second 100K that the bank contributed. Folks, you just increased your rate of return to about 9%, didn't you? Because you only put in the first 100, the bank put in the second 100. By the way, the bank puts in the next year, the third 100,000. So now 300,000 is in there. You're making 575 on the fixed portion on the first 100, and the 3% positive arbitrage on the second and the third. So now we're getting, our rate of return is increasing even further, isn't it? Now we're getting into double-digit returns by the third year. It's really 2 years. It's really 2 years and a day when that starts happening. But you see my point. By year 3, you're seeing double-digit returns. This continues on in most cases, typically for 10 years. In other words, you fund the first year, the bank funds the next 9. So if you did that, you would have funded 100,000. The bank would have funded 900,000. In other words, $1 million would have been contributed to this policy during dividends. What do you think is going to happen with $1 million contribution over 10 years? Well, at just 575, the fixed rate alone, it's getting 57,000, right? Almost 60,000 of dividends annually. And if your positive arbitrage is 3%, you're making 3% on that million. You're actually making a little more in the first 100 you put in, but to keep it simple, you're making about 3% or better on $1 million. So I always ask people a simple question. Would you prefer to make, say, 6%, 7%, it's typical, on 100,000, that'd be 6-7 grand a year, or would you rather make about 3% on $1 million, which is 30,000, isn't it? There's actually compounding involved, folks, so the numbers typically are higher, but I'm just doing this as a simple example without all the compounding, just as a matter to help understand. The answer is simple, because you put in 100,000 in both examples, but now you're earning interest on a much bigger number. And remember, this is all backed and guaranteed against losses. And you're using other people's money. You're using bank money to do this. Now, folks, this is how banks make money. I'm going to talk about this further in the next segments, and I'm going to share some other current event information that is, some of it's interesting, some of it's very exciting, but it's just important to know. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is, if you want more information on all this, contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. Look, if you missed the last segment, I got on a roll. I'm really going to encourage you to go back to yourpersonalbank.com and listen to it if you missed it. If you heard it, I think you know I've hit this hard. I'm going to go further on this idea in terms of the ability to leverage bank money to make money safely, or leverage funds safely. But before I forget, I was going to mention in the first segment, stay tuned to the next show, because I'm going to be interviewing one of the key folks that has worked with this program for nearly a decade, and I'm just going to pester him with questions on how this works. So I'm really going to encourage you to stay tuned to the next Your Personal Bank Show, because I'll be interviewing one of the key folks on this. This is something I've known about. I've worked with myself for many, many years. I just trying to put everything together and finding the folks that can help me put this together. We're dealing with institutional money here, Wall Street monies, banks, different things like this, major financial institutions, and getting them to work together, and then finding the right partners. All that stuff takes a lot of time, folks, and COVID didn't help. Okay, but this is why I'm excited. This is where I've been heading towards. I knew this is where I wanted to get to. I've been sharing this idea in general, big picture, so to speak. Anywhere, if you attended any of my workshops that I shared over the years, any of the clients I've talked to, you've known this is the vision. I knew where I wanted to get to. I knew it's done. I just needed to be able to bring it to the average investor. Please understand, this is readily available and commonly used in the institutional world. bringing it, getting it put together so it works, and folks willing to work with what, as Wall Street calls, retail investors. That's they define that typically as folks with less than 10 million liquid assets. Just so you know, I don't define that. That's just a common definition. It's a loose one, but you know what I mean. Finding the people willing to work with that and do that and provide any kind of customer service at all is extraordinarily difficult. But that's why I'm so excited. I have succeeded in accomplishing that vision and that goal. And I don't know of any other folks doing this in the country on a retail level, bringing us to the general public, I should say. I know many that are doing it on the institutional level. So again, I think there could be, I'm just not aware of them. And so again, that's why personally I'm just so excited about this, because I've known about this. I know how this works. I've worked with this with our bank board meetings, which is done commonly. But to bring it to the average folks, which has been my vision from the beginning, that's why I'm doing that. That's why I started doing the radio show, to start educating people about how you can safely leverage money and use bank money to do it. You don't have to take on risk, folks, or unnecessary risk. You can have your entire portfolio guaranteed if you want to. Banks don't take risks, yet they make money. In fact, a lot of people are not aware of this, but last year, this is in 2021, the average profits of the average local community bank, regional bank in Arizona was a little over 20%, almost 21% profits. Folks, banks are doing well. They're making money and they're not taking on risk. And one of my biggest pet peeves, I've seen my entire career working with folks on financial matters, has been, sadly, most people I've seen take on far, far too much risk. And yet I see these institutional investors making bank, frankly, without taking on that kind of risk. And so to bring this to people, especially at a time like this, when the economy is really struggling, the economy it's challenging. How's that? The economy, in some respects, is going great, in others it's not. Certainly, inflation is a major problem. All those things are going on. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, stock market in particular, real estate market. We're going to see what happens, but there's some real question marks coming down the pike with that, especially when interest rates start to climb, as the Federal Reserve has stated they're going to do. To bring this to the table at this time, this point in time, I don't talk about this a lot, but many people have inferred this. But, I do believe in a higher being. I do believe in God. And sometimes I get frustrated because, and I know we as human beings do, because we want things to happen in our time, in a certain time, if you know what I mean. And we get frustrated when they don't happen in the time frame we think they should. And, as I've gone through life and gained some maturity, you learn that, there's reasons behind it. It's not necessarily in our time, but it's in God's time. And I believe this is the right time, because I'm actually going to be able to make the biggest difference now for people, because the reality is a lot of people right now are looking. And they're concerned, and they have fear, and they're scared, and they have, and rightly so. Okay, they have very good reasons to be concerned. And so when things are going well and you're doing good, and for example, if you buy a house and it goes up every year, and you buy a stock and it goes up every year, things are going. Most people, they're not looking for something else, because what you're doing is working. And for the last decade, roughly, that's worked really well, hasn't it? The Federal Reserve had a lot to do with that, with easy monetary policy. We've talked about that many, many times, but that's all changing, rapidly changing. The Federal Reserve's most people believe in the very near future, we're going to see a 0.5 point interest rate hike. In fact, by the time you listen to this, because some people listen later online, yourpersonalbank.com, it may have already happened. But my point is, I guess I got a little off track there, but I think it's important to share that how important it is, the timing, how excited I am that the timing, this finally came together after a year. It's been several years, okay, of putting the pieces together. And there's been ups and downs, and there's been setbacks, and step forward, two steps forward, one step back. You know how that goes throughout the process. But I never gave up on the vision of bringing this to the average person, average American, so they too could take advantage of getting double-digit returns on their money with safety, no downside risk, and tax-free, just like the institutional investors do, just like the banks do. So like I said, this is something I strongly encourage you to look into. You can call me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com and take advantage of this and start earning money safely with guarantees. Build yourself up to get double-digit returns, and tax-free, and stop worrying about what's going to happen with the stock market or interest rates or whatever for that matter. You're going to see a positive return and not have to take on the risk, strong returns, double-digit returns without the risk. And that's real. And using the leveraging, like I was talking about in the last segment, where you're funding the first part, your first year, and then the bank is funding, say, the next 9 years. So for every dollar you contribute, they contribute 9. So if you contribute 10 grand, there's 100 in there that you're earning interest on. And even though they charge you interest on their contribution, you're making roughly double on average of what they're charging you. So you're keeping the difference. Like I said, 3, 4, 5% is kind of normal, depending on the mix that we do with the fixed and the indexes. Okay, annually. So again, would you rather make 6% on 100,000 or 3% on $1 million? I mean, that's a pretty easy question to answer. Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm talking about this further and some other really key points, key things that are current events that are going on. I think would be really important to know about. So stay tuned. Don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. So if you missed a quick reminder, stay tuned to the next Your Personal Bank Show, because I will be interviewing one of the key people on this method of leveraging bank money safely to get double-digit returns on up to tenfold the amount of money you contribute. Safely, with safety, guaranteed double-digit return. I mean, not guaranteed. It has guarantees. Typically, have double-digit returns, tax-free. Really powerful concept. So, learn more about it. Stay tuned to the next show, and go back to yourpersonalbank.com. I talked about it earlier today and last week, just our last show previously, briefly. Some things I want to touch on, though, current events. I think that are very important. There's a lot of talk recently about Biden forgiving student loans and college loans. And I know there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle on this, but from a financial standpoint, here's a few things that I think are important to understand. First of all, if Biden does forgive the student loan debt, you're talking about roughly $1.75 trillion in debt to lending institutions. Okay. Here's the thing. Biden can forgive the debt. The students won't have to pay it anymore. But it's not like the debt goes away. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis announced that the taxpayers would eat probably about $1.6 trillion in federal loans if they forgive the debt. In other words, we, the taxpayers, are going to pay the debt for these college students that didn't. The debt does not go away. It just gets offloaded to everyone. So whether you had a college loan, student loan or not, whether you paid yours back or not, you're going to get to pay for it. Okay? It'll just be added on to our national debt, and taxes and whatever will be the ones that get to pay for it. Now, of course, those that don't pay taxes are all for this because, well, they can offload this debt if they have it, and they're not going to pay it anyway. So you can start to understand why there's some people so in favor of that. Now, sadly, if somebody is on favor of all that and they don't pay taxes because they don't make enough income, that's just, there's other issues going on there, credibility issues and things that if that's something you think is a good idea to make someone else pay your debt, I see a problem with that, to be totally fair. But, some people don't care, right? the people that didn't go to college, guess what? It'll be added to their taxes. They're going to pay it because again, the debt doesn't disappear. It's like 1.6 trillion, and in fact, the studies show that the highest 40% of households, typically those with incomes above 74,000 annually, owe like 60% of the student loan debt. In other words, generally speaking, the folks that are the higher income folks, families, are the ones that have the debt. So the lower incomes folks will have to pay it also. That is, if they do pay any taxes. But a blue collar employee, let's face it, we'll end up having to probably pay some more in tax, if nothing else, withholding tax or something like that to pay off this debt. What about someone who just paid off most or all of their debt recently, and now it's all forgiven? They were financially responsible, and they paid it off or whatever. They could have used that money for other purposes, and other people are going to get out of jail free card, so to speak. Is that fair? I mean, you got to look at it. There's no fairness in that, okay? And then, there's a lot of, how are they going to handle this? The Biden administration has been notorious about changing the rules along the way and going back and forth and not having a clearly laid out plan. So frankly, it'll probably be disastrous. Okay. I just don't think it could go smoothly at all. And then there's colleges and students who didn't participate in any federal loan programs. There's schools like Hillsdale College, Christendom College in Virginia that refused to participate in federal loan programs because they wanted to be free from the shackles of big government. They just philosophically they don't agree with. They're penalized because, well, guess what? They had to pay through private loans and other things like that. They won't get any forgiveness. And then you also have recent citizens, for example, who haven't really paid into the system much, who guess what? They'll get to hey, they came here, got a college degree, had some student loan debt, and guess what? It gets paid off. Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks so much. Like I said, why would it make sense for an immigrant who just became a tax-paying citizen to get their loans paid off against somebody who maybe paid them off, who's been paying in the system for 20 years? You see what I'm saying? The unfairness of it is colossal. And I don't think there's any clear way. Now, obviously, it's a political thing to score political points. That's why I think there's a good chance something's going to happen. We will see. But it's certainly, no matter how they do it, it will be inherently unfair. Contact me for more information at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. Before I forget, stay tuned to the next Your Personal Bank Show. I'll be interviewing one of the key people that's going to be sharing how you can safely leverage bank money to increase your rates of returns. Double-digit returns on average, solid double-digit, with safety, tax-free, using other people's money, using bank money. Pretty exciting, so don't miss it. Stay tuned. We've been talking about some of the things that are happening recently. I discussed in the last segment of student loans. Like I said, my overall Biden administration paying off or forgiving the student loans. No matter how it's done, the biggest problem I see with it is that it's inherently unfair to the people who don't have student loans or paid them off or whatever. And I don't see any way around it not being an unfair setup. I do believe because of the situation Biden's in, that he's put himself in, let's face it, politically there's a lot of pressure towards it, and that's increasing. So for a while I didn't think anything was going to happen, but as time goes forward, it looks increasingly likely that something's going to happen on that front. And it's just sad for those that are just going to, in a way, really comes down to political bribery. It's a way to pay back a promise made to people who voted for him, but also saying, hey, I forgave your loan, so vote for me or vote for our party, right? I mean, I don't see how it's much different than, bribery, which frankly is illegal, right? So anyway, there's some other things though that are going on that just were eye-opening. One of them was, I saw that San Francisco has spent billions to end homelessness, and it's been a total and complete disaster. Apparently, literally San Francisco is, again, spending billions and billions of dollars, but 14% of all drug overdoses occurred within San Francisco's taxpayer-funded housing. In other words, they have a drug overdose problem. And, the reality is the money that they're putting into this is doing nothing but continue it, encourage it. It's, in my opinion, these are people that claim, you hear them say they claim to care about the homeless and stuff like that, but they're doing them a terrible disservice, and they're doing an extreme amount of harm, in my opinion. I think they're doing far more to hurt these people than to help them. They're not giving them a leg up. They're just basically allowing them to continue to wallow and fail. And many die. Let's face it. It's really, really extremely sad. I think it's completely misguided. It's evil. These people need help. And all this money and stuff they're pouring into them is just doing nothing to help these people, where it should be these people need help. And that's where the focus should be, in helping these people, not enabling them. That's the word I was trying to think of. It's just an enabling problem. And if somebody's got a problem like a drug problem, you can't just enable them. You have to help them. And I wish these people could see that. But it's California. In fact, one of the other things I saw, it blew me away. I mean, it blew me away in one respect, but the other side of the point, I say, well, there goes crazy California again. So even as prices of the pump remain high, California is still going to raise its gas tax. They're going to raise their gas taxes another 5% July 1st, and they have the highest gas costs and taxes in the country, in the highest gas fuel in history, right? Some of the highest gas prices we've ever seen. But now California's going to raise the tax on it again. Now, at first, on the surface, it just seems completely and totally, beyond ridiculous. It's like I mentioned to my wife, she's like, why in the world would they do that? And as I read into this further, I came to the realization, I figured it out. Why? See, you've listened to the show, I share this all the time. If you want to understand why something is the way it is, you have to think a little bit sometimes, but you want to follow the power or follow the money. Power leads to money, right? Or money leads to power, one or the other. But it's all about power or money, right? And so Governor Newsom, the governor of California, has been proposing, instead of reducing the taxes or not allowing the tax to increase further, he's talking about providing a tax rebate to provide billions in direct relief to Californians. And he'll distribute up to something like, his plan would distribute up to $800 a person. And it would be, given to people, obviously people with cars registered in California. I don't know. I think I could probably register a car in California. I'm not sure. I live in Arizona. But anyway, I'm sure some people will think of that. But my point is simple, is instead of reducing the tax, which would be the smart economic thing to do and would actually help people, no, instead they're going to raise the tax and then turn around and rebate the tax to people that they decide deserve it. Now, how are they going to figure that out? Well, they haven't really revealed that part yet. But obviously, they're going to pay it back to the people that they think are going to vote for them, right? In other words, when I thought about that, and then I saw this other article, and it totally confirmed my thoughts. And I had no idea this was going on, but it completely now makes sense. Turns out Chicago Mayor Lightfoot has given away $12.5 million of gas cards with her name blasted all over it. Okay? A lot of people are calling it as a re-election gimmick. In other words, gas is high in Chicago also. And so apparently they're handing out 50,000 gas cards that are worth up to $150 and to people for folks that earn up to $75,000. Okay. And, there's, like they said, 75% of giveaways will benefit people in minority neighborhoods who are facing mobility hardships. Okay, it sounds all great on the surface. But think about this a minute. Couldn't they just as easily just reduce the cost of gas by reducing the tax? But no. I mean, they could. And that would, of course, benefit everybody equally, fairly. But that's not how politicians think. Okay? No. Mayor Lightfoot wants to have her name put on these gas cards and have these gas cards given out to people. And so her name's on it. So a lot of people are going to associate that with, hey, the mayor gave us back some money or gave us some free gas. And then they're going to vote for her, which is another form, in my opinion, bribery, right? Which, frankly, should be illegal. But, they're doing it. So who's going to stop them, right? Do you think Governor Newsom might have something in mind similar? Of course he does. And where did they all get this idea from? Well, here's the sad part. Those of you who listen know I'm an equal opportunist in terms of if a politician or anybody in power does something that I don't agree with, I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. But I was very much against when if you remember, the first COVID relief checks that went out from the federal government, they went out, and I saw some. I didn't get one myself, but I saw them because they only went to folks with certain incomes. I saw that they had Donald J. Trump written on them. So I did not like that. I thought that was a very bad move, and because of course that's going to be copied, and you see these other politicians now starting to copy that idea. Now I don't know if Trump was the first one to do it. To be totally fair, I have no idea. He might have been the first one to do it nationally, but I think whoever recommended or revised that did a disservice, because that's just encouraging people to become reliant on the government. Some people, I'm certain of this, thought, hey, this is cool. Donald Trump sent me a check, so I'm going to vote for him, which is a form of bribery, in my opinion. It should be illegal. And now you're going to have these Democratic governors and mayors and folks doing the same thing. So I believe this is something that should be outlawed, and it's just not a good thing. It's not a good it's not a good message. The message should be, look, no one's going to take care of you. And let's face it, the Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago giving folks $150 is not going to change the increased gas costs, inflation, and everything else that the people are paying. If Governor Newsom manages to get his deal through and gives up to $800 per person for gas cards, it's not going to offset the cost of inflation and fuel, but it'll make people feel better, and it's misleading, okay? And again, it leads people to it gets them to start thinking about relying on government more. Folks, a politician you've never met, why in the world would you ever think, because again, will any of us ever meet a president or a governor or a mayor even, for that matter? Very, very few of us will ever meet any politician, for that matter, in person. Plus, meeting them's one thing. Will they ever even know you or even know your name? And the reality is, with very few exceptions, no. They have no idea who you are, where you live, what your concerns are, any of it. They just want to get reelected. They want to get elected and then reelected. That's the bottom line. And if more people start realizing that, and I think more are, and realizing that if you want to make it in life, you've got to do it yourself. No one's going to come and rescue you. That's the reality of life. And you might get some help from family, things like that at times, but it's really up to you. It's up to you to make it in this world and make of yourself whatever it is you want to be. You can rely on people sometimes for help and times you're down. I get that. And you can have a social safety net and all that, which is great. I have some of those things too, and mentors and friends and family, and you should have those things. But the reality is, it's true. If you want to make it, it's up to you. And the more we send that message to people and they realize that, the better off they'll be and the better off our country and society will be. We don't need politicians sending us gas cards because gas prices have doubled in the last year and getting people to think that that's a good thing. That's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. So that's my thoughts on those kinds of things. Hope you know where I stand. Whether you agree or not, guess what? It's a free country still, and I'm really excited about this whole Twitter thing and Elon Musk because I'm seeing a real change from a year or so ago where voices were being shut down. And you know what? I heard somebody say this the other day, and I thought it was so good. I have the right to remain silent, but I don't have the ability to do that. And I guess that's how I feel. I feel strongly about the way I feel, and I can't stay silent about it. The last thing I want to share, I've just got another minute or two. I want to go back to what I started with on this leveraging idea of being able to fund, say, the first year, have a policy to earn dividends, and then have a bank fund the next, say, 9 years. So you're earning interest on like I said, would you rather earn 3% interest on $1 million or 6% on 100,000? That's a pretty easy answer because you want to make 6,000 a year or 30,000 a year. You see what I mean? And your contribution is the same. But so I was talking to him about that just a couple of days ago. He goes, I've been listening to you for a while, and he says I was talking to I talked to my broker, my financial guy, about your concept, the personal bank, and what you do, and he kind of hemmed and hawed and didn't really know much about it and referred me to somebody. And I said to him, and he quickly realized that his financial guy just didn't know much about this. And I said, the reality is this: if you're looking for somebody to manage your money and help you pick stocks and manage a portfolio, I'm not your guy. I'm not your person for that. I have people I can recommend you to because that's not my forte. Many of you have that already, and that's great. And if you have one you like, keep them. I'm a specialist. I'm like the brain surgeon. Instead of, there's many financial advisors out there that manage money. That's your MDs, right? But there's very, very few of us that do what I do to leverage the money and show you how to do this with safety, guaranteed, tax-free. And if you want to learn more about how to do that and keep doing what you're doing, but enhance it dramatically, call me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. Again, that's 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.